This is Washoe County Courthouse. Inside are Rupert Murdoch, 4 of his children, and a lot of lawyers. According to the New York Times, this is the first time in 2 years they've all been under the same roof. The Murdochs have turned against each other, divided into 2 factions, and now they're at war. They're fighting over the family business, the most powerful media empire the world has ever seen.
If Rupert Murdoch is not the most powerful media mogul in the world, he would like very much to be.
Donald J. Trump.
Trump is at his best when he's sort of slightly tongue-in-cheek like that, I find. He's a very funny guy.
These companies control the news for millions of people, what they see, read, and hear every day. Fox News speaks directly to America's conservative voters and to its current president. Rupert Murdoch is now 93 years old, and at this point, it's still not clear who will succeed him.
Have your dad ever had this conversation with you? Someday you'll run this company.
No. My father's focused on, the day-to-day.
That's really not an issue that I concern myself with. As I said,
lots of other people concern themselves with.
That's their business.
I've always and will always strive to be qualified and considered for that position. It's not my decision.
One side wants to seize control of the family trust. The other wants to stop them at all costs. Whoever wins will have enormous political influence, but their victory will almost certainly tear the family apart for good. Much of our research for this video draws on reporting from the New York Times, The Atlantic, and other accredited news outlets. Direct quotes attributed to members of the Murdoch family are largely based on this reporting. All sources are listed in the video description. That said, many details and nuances could not be independently verified by us. We also contacted all major Murdoch family members to request statements confirming the main aspects of the story, but none responded. It's early Sunday morning, and young Rupert Murdoch is still in bed. He's 21 now. He's always been a bit of a loner, but now, at Oxford, he's coming out of his shell. He's socializing and dabbling in left-wing politics, even joining the Labour Party. But what he really wants, more than anything, is the respect of his father. Sir Keith Murdoch is an Australian newspaperman. He dreams of creating a national news chain in Australia, so he skillfully cultivates political influence to bypass media regulations. So Keith burns with ambition. He hoped his son would too, but Rupert never did well in school. He preferred to skip class to go gamble on horse racing. All his life, Rupert has yearned for his father's approval, but now he'll never have the chance to earn it.
I was sleeping in one Sunday morning when my tutor came in and woke me up, told me that my father had died. Any memory I really have of it is one of complete shock.
Rupert flies back to Australia as fast as he can, but he misses his father's funeral. Then he finds out that his inheritance is significantly diminished. Sir Keith established family trusts back in the 1930s. Family trusts are commonly used to manage assets and pass on wealth to future generations. But Sir Keith's death is sudden and unexpected, and his estate carries a serious amount of debt. To pay this off, Rupert's mother had to sell off half of his father's estate. Now Rupert is furious. He's been cheated. Instead of the empire his father was working to build, he inherits just a single local newspaper, The News of Adelaide. He takes it and does what his father never could. He builds a newspaper empire. By the time he's 40, Rupert has gone further than his father could have dreamt. He founded the first national newspaper in Australia, The Australian, and soon he used that platform to help catapult a politician into the Prime Minister's office. He's conquered Australia. Next up, the rest of the world. This is Chequers, the British Prime Minister's 600-hectare county estate, located 50 kilometers from London. It's afternoon. Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher is sitting down to eat. Thatcher wants to keep this lunch a secret. For the rest of her life, she'll deny it ever happened. But notes in her official archive tell a different story. Sitting across from her is Rupert Murdoch. In a few months, Rupert will turn 50. He's easily one of the most powerful figures in Australian media. His company, News Corp, dominates about 2/3 of the newspaper market in the country, and it's gone global, acquiring newspapers in the UK and the US. Now he sets his sight on a new prize, the Times of London, one of the oldest and most respected newspapers in the world. Acquiring the Times would give him control over 40% of the British press, a monopoly, according to UK law. That would mean legal scrutiny. Possibly hoping to avoid that scrutiny, Rupert is now having lunch with the Prime Minister. Back in Australia, he established a successful formula. First, acquire a newspaper and make it successful through populist journalism, then leverage that success to obtain more properties. Next, gain control over a prestigious newspaper. Respected broadsheets tend to reach a different audience, powerful people, including politicians. Speaking directly to people like this means a chance to influence policy. Through endorsements and editorials, it can even mean having an impact on elections. For a newspaper mogul intent on growing an empire, that kind of influence could be worth its weight in gold. In the UK, Rupert applied his formula on a bigger stage. His toehold was News of the World, a weekly left-wing tabloid newspaper he acquired in 1969. A year later, he added a daily, The Sun. Both papers became known for headlines like these, and for a willingness to focus on sex, drugs, and scandal. The Sun even introduced a new daily feature, a topless page 3 girl. It broke with tradition on Fleet Street, home of the British press.
We were tearing up the old ways and inventing a new form of journalism, a new way. We were the enfant terrible of Fleet Street and proud to be so.
Sales began climbing. A decade later, The Sun was Britain's best-selling tabloid. The new approach also earned Rupert a nickname.
That strata of society called him the Dirty Digger.
Now Rupert is making his case to Thatcher for why he should be allowed to take over the Times of London. He just wants to make improvements to the paper, he says. He'll be a hands-off owner. Later on, he'll guarantee this with a written promise. Afterward, he thanks her for the lunch with this handwritten note. He calls her, "My dear Prime Minister." There's no evidence that Rupert and Thatcher made a deal. Thatcher carefully avoids any suggestion of this even in her own documents. Her official record of the event states she did no more than wish him well in his bid. But this official record doesn't even cover the entire meeting, just the salient points. And in accordance with Thatcher's wishes, it was kept confidential. No one outside of the Prime Minister's office was to know about her lunch with Rupert. This has led some to speculate that over lunch, Rupert Murdoch and Margaret Thatcher may have arrived at an understanding. What is certain is that within weeks, the Monopolies Commission decides not to look into Rupert buying the Times. Soon, he owns the paper. At the same time, Britain is stuck in a recession. Thatcher is deeply unpopular. But in April 1982, Britain goes to war with Argentina over the Falkland Islands, and Rupert's tabloid, The Sun, goes all in on supporting it. As Britain's best-selling tabloid, The Sun reaches a huge portion of the British public, and many believe its aggressive support for the war hugely boosted Thatcher's popularity. Some have even suggested this might have saved her prime ministership. Rupert applies his formula on the other side of the Atlantic too. His tabloid, New York Post, helps deliver the long-shot candidate at Koch to the New York City's mayor's office.
I wouldn't be in a position to say I was mayor of New York City if Rupert hadn't endorsed me. He gave me credibility.
Then the Post gets behind Ronald Reagan's presidential candidacy.
The endorsement of the New York Post of Ronald Reagan was crucial. Reagan carried New York State in the 1980 election.
During the Reagan administration, Rupert's drive to expand faces fewer barriers. At the time, American regulations prohibit owning a major newspaper and a television station that share the same market. Under the Reagan administration, the Federal Communications Commission temporarily waives these regulations for Rupert. Only American citizens can directly own more than 20% of a TV station. So Rupert applies for citizenship. In September 1986, he receives it, quickly enough that some claim his application was fast-tracked. With these roadblocks out of the way, he's free to buy a handful of television stations. Then he buys a movie studio, 20th Century Fox. A month after receiving his American citizenship, he combines these new assets and launches the first new major broadcast television network since the 1950s. Fox's shows are a bright, edgy alternative to straight-laced broadcast television, and Living Color presents sketch comedy with a black, hip-hop inflected perspective. The Simpsons and Married with Children reinvent the family sitcom as dysfunctional and even racy. And then Reagan eliminates the fairness doctrine, which had required broadcasters to give equal time to both sides of controversial issues. Many see this as paving the way for partisan media, and eventually a channel that will change the American media landscape forever.
Thank you very much for your attendance at such short notice. You have the press statement, I think, which tells you everything.
On January 30th, 1996, Rupert Murdoch announces the Fox News Channel. His network TV station, also called Fox, has been on the air for a decade. Now he's finally making the leap to cable. Rupert's news station will be challenging the 400-pound gorilla of 24-hour news, CNN. To pull it off, he hires this man.
I'd like to thank Mr. Murdoch for the kind words. Thank you all for coming this morning on short notice. I know that you're good journalists, therefore.
His name is Roger Ailes. Rupert hired him to build Fox News from scratch. They have a lot in common: conservative politics, an instinctively anti-establishment point of view aimed at what they see as liberal elites, and it's a crystal clear vision for Fox News. The network will cater to an overlooked audience: older, white, less educated, church-going, rural, and most of all, conservative, so-called Middle America. The two men will reportedly joke that they've uncovered a whole new market: half the country. Ailes was media advisor to Presidents Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and George H.W. Bush. He knows the target demographic well. He's also a controversial figure in the media landscape. Just weeks before the debut of the Fox News channel, he left a job at NBC after reportedly hurling an anti-Semitic slur at a co-worker. And he's known as a magician of the divisive power of media. For Fox, he's later quoted as saying, "It's not enough that conservatives like us, but that liberals hate us."
Fox News Channel, fair and balanced.
When Fox debuts, the studio looks cheap, thrown together, but it's undeniably different. It's colorful and deliberately edgy. Over and over, the station's slogan is repeated: fair and balanced. It worked, and ratings soared. By 2002, Fox News had become the most watched cable news channel in America. For many conservatives, it became the only channel, and its base was always expanding. In 2007, a study found that when Fox News entered a local media market, it pushed viewers to the right and made them more likely to vote Republican. This was called the Fox News effect. If a Republican politician wanted to reach their base on the national stage, it was said the only road went through Fox.
Republicans originally thought that Fox worked for us, and now we're discovering we work for Fox.
News Corps' power and influence now spans several continents, but Rupert himself was aging. He had always considered his empire a family business, and like his father, he had considered his legacy.
My two sons are very interested in having major careers, and I'm doing what I can to train them and give them opportunities and see what mistakes they make and what triumphs they have.
But which of his children would one day take control? On that point, Rupert could be maddeningly hard to read.
You have 3 adult children, Lachlan, James, and Elizabeth, each of whom is now a very accomplished media executive in his own right. At the same time, you have reportedly told your biggest outside shareholder, Prince Walid, quote, "I'm going to stay on as CEO until I'm 130. So, as I say,
I'm more realistic than that, really.
Rupert Murdoch raised his children to be media moguls. He pushed them to be part of his empire.
We knew that Dad loved the time he had with us, and he wanted us to be part of his world. And I think that as a child, you have to be part of that world in some ways if you're going to be engaged with him.
One day, one of them would take over the family business. But which one? According to observers, the children were constantly trying to figure out where they stood with their father. Who did he favor at any given time? Family life revolved around succession. Each child grew up trying to prove themselves worthy. Elizabeth Murdoch is often described as bright, capable, and like her father. With his help, she purchased a pair of television stations in California. About a year later, she sold them for a $12 million profit. Soon, she'll be climbing the corporate ladder at her father's satellite TV station, B-Sky B. She's tough, ambitious, and has her eye on the top job.
I have always and will always strive to be qualified and considered for that position. It's not my decision.
But in the race for succession, many believe she has a handicap.
It has been said that he's never been a person particularly comfortable with women in senior positions.
Did you say you got a quote on that?
I haven't got a quote on that. It's been said, as I said in the
I don't think he ever actually said. I don't know if that's true. I can think of a number of senior women that he's come to count on and rely on in very, very important positions. I think Dad is traditional in many ways.
Lachlan Murdoch is Rupert's eldest son. He's often said to be the apple of his father's eye. He just graduated from Princeton University. Now he's working on his father's newspapers in Australia. He's young, rich, and a budding celebrity.
Have your dad ever had this conversation with you? Someday you'll run this company.
No. My father's focused on, the day-to-day.
Prudence is Rupert's only child from his first marriage. She's also the only Murdoch sibling to avoid the family business, though her husband works for News Corp. James Murdoch is often called the family rebel, dropped out of Harvard to follow the Grateful Dead on tour, founded a hip-hop label, Raucous Records.
Yeah, that's really not an issue that I concern myself with. As I said,
Lots of other people concern themselves with.
That's their business.
Anna Murdoch is Rupert's second wife, and has been part of News Corp since she was 18 years old. She met Rupert while interviewing him for one of his Australian newspapers. Anna's on the News Corp board of directors. She's mother to Elizabeth, James, and Lachlan, and she helped raise Prudence. As they grow up, Anna worried about what the competition to succeed their father was doing to her children.
Your sons, are they planning to go into the newspaper business?
I think so, and so is my daughter. I mean, I can see lots of arguments along the way. Yeah. Who knows what will happen?
It wasn't always easy. Rupert's work always came first.
Newspapers are in his blood. He's a good Australian businessman who's come here. I'm going to show you how to do it.
And it never, ever stopped.
It is awful sometimes, and it is lonely, and you are cut out of it. But I don't think I'd change it for anything at all.
For decades, Anna's been patiently waiting for him to retire so they can enjoy their golden years together. On that day, he would name his successor. Win or lose, the children would all be free of their burden of succession. Anna could enjoy life with her husband, free from the burden of News Corp invading every second of their lives. But instead, in 1998, everything changed. By now, Rupert is 67. He still hasn't retired, and he's met someone else. Her name is Wendy Deng. She works at one of Rupert's TV stations in China. She's been acting as his private translator when he visits the region, and she's half his age. Rupert insists nothing is going on, but Anna is sure he's having an affair. Either way, he swiftly cuts Anna out of his personal and professional lives. At first, Rupert and Anna announce that their separation will be amicable. Anna will remain on the News Corp board. But then in News Corp's annual report, Anna reads that she's retiring. Then she claims he gave her a direct order. You get off the board. But Anna has one last card to play. Legally, she's entitled to half the assets Rupert has created since they've been married. But she wants something else. Anna sees what competing for succession is doing to her children, and she wants to make sure Rupert can never toss them aside, like he has her. To protect them, she wants to ensure that all four will inherit a share of the family business, so she sacrifices half of what she's entitled to in the divorce. In exchange, Rupert agrees to restructure the family trust. His 4 children will each control a single vote within the trust, while Rupert will control 4. But when he dies, his votes will disappear. Elizabeth, James, Lachlan, and Prudence will control the trust assets equally. These assets have been valued at more than $7 billion. But there's an even bigger prize. They include almost half of the voting stock in 2 of the most influential media companies in the English-speaking world. The voting power will also belong to Rupert's children equally. These companies decide what millions of people read, hear, and watch on a daily basis. Managing a huge empire is quite the challenge. You don't need to be a media mogul to know that one of the biggest hassles in any workplace is the chaos of disconnected tools and software platforms. But there's a solution: Odoo. Odoo is a single centralized platform for managing your entire business. Need to track hours, sign documents, manage projects, or even build a website? Whatever your needs, Odoo has over 45 apps to choose from. What's more, they're integrated. Thanks to Odoo, your sales, accounting, and inventory management apps can all update each other, giving you a cohesive, up-to-date overview. Odoo is even tailored to your location, so no more wasting time figuring out local taxes, rates, and regulations. Odoo does it for you. Odoo grows with you. Start with the apps you need and add more as your business evolves. The first application is free for life, with unlimited support and hosting included. Starting at 19.90 euros per month, you gain access to all available applications. Click the link in the description to check it out. In the early 2000s, the Murdoch empire was arguably at its peak, reaching 5 continents and 3/4 of the world's population. One of the companies controlled by the shares in the Murdoch family trust, News Corp, owns media properties all over the world. The other is the most profitable cable news channel in America. In time, it'll become much more. James will later say that with the trust, the idea was that it would incentivize us to cooperate. What actually happens is very different. And at the heart of it is Fox News. This plane is flying from Sydney to New York. Inside it, Lachlan Murdoch is brooding. A few months from now, Lachlan will describe the events that follow to a reporter for New York Magazine. Our description is largely based on that reporting. Lachlan is now 33 years old. 5 years ago, his father promoted him to Deputy Chief Operating Officer of News Corps. As Deputy COO, Lachlan is responsible for running the New York Post, the publisher HarperCollins, and 35 TV stations. Rupert is still head of the company, and he shows no signs of slowing down. But he's now 75 years old. One way or another, he'll have to step down soon. It's an open secret that Lachlan is winning the race for succession. At this point, his sisters are out of the running, and his brother James trails behind. Lachlan has long seemed to have an advantage. He's very much his father's son, sharing his conservative politics and deep love for Australia. In 1997, Rupert told an interviewer that of his children, Lachlan was first among equals. But something isn't right. Lately, he's in conflict with Roger Ailes, the father of Fox News. As one of Rupert's most trusted executives, Ailes is largely allowed to do what he likes. This includes pushing his ideas for the TV stations Lachlan is in charge of. Ailes' most recent idea is a show called Crime Line. For financial reasons, Lachlan turned it down. According to New York Magazine, Ailes went to Rupert and told him about Crime Line. Rupert told him, "Do the show, don't listen to Lachlan." Lachlan feels undermined by Rupert, and it isn't the first time. Now he's heading back to America. He and his father are going to have a talk. In New York, Lachlan and Rupert discuss the situation over lunch. Rupert listens. He offers suggestions, maybe changing the organization chart. But Lachlan knows his father isn't going to change. He wouldn't ask him to. Still, if things stay as they are, their relationship could seriously deteriorate. Something begins to dawn on Lachlan. He's used to thinking about himself in relation to the company and to his father. It's just difficult to sort of uncouple your life and your identity from the company, he thinks. Then he makes a decision. I have to do my own thing, he says. I have to be my own man. And with that, he steps down as Deputy COO and moves back to Australia with his family. He remains on the News Corps board, but in the race for succession, he's no longer the leader. Suddenly, James is. By this time, James is a long way from his years as a rebel. Back in 1995, he co-founded the hip-hop label Raucous Records. But then Rupert bought the label, dragging his son into the family business. He's been busy proving himself ever since. In 2007, he receives a major promotion to running News Corps operations through Europe and Asia. Then something strange happens. James' personality reportedly seems to change. He'd always been energetic, analytical, offbeat. At work, he was known as technocratic and given to business jargon. But now he seems brash, cocky. Some think he's emulating his father, and he's reportedly assembled a loyal team in London. To many, it looks like a rival power center in the company. No one knows exactly how Rupert sees this, but to some observers, he seems proud, and maybe a bit threatened. In 2010, Rupert proposes something unusual: family therapy. At a retreat at the Murdoch family in Cavan Station, Australia, a specialist will help him and his adult children work on how they treat each other. Months later, news of the retreat was leaked to Vanity Fair. The magazine described how the siblings came together to help James become a better leader and improve his relationship with Rupert. James later described something very different to The Atlantic. According to him, the therapist first met with everyone individually. Then, at a session with the whole family, everything supposedly fell apart. According to James, there was gaslighting, accusations, strategic maneuvering. Even in family therapy, each of the Murdochs were advancing a personal agenda. James describes it as a car crash that left the family in even worse shape. Afterward, Elizabeth supposedly offers to create a family constitution. According to The Atlantic, James helps her. Together, they create a draft, including principles like, "We commit to undertake active dialogue with each other at all times, and to relentlessly communicate openly with trust and humility. And we will be vigilant of and defend against divisiveness, either between us or that which could infiltrate from without." In February 2011, Elizabeth, James, Lachlan, and Prudence reportedly all signed the document. But their newfound resolve to stick together is about to be tested like never before. This is Rupert Murdoch's war room. Rupert is fighting to contain the biggest scandal in News Corps history. Elizabeth is advising him and also providing emotional support. According to reporting, she thinks the best public relations move would be to let someone in the family take the fall. And her brother James is in charge of News Corps operations in Europe and Asia. It should be him. Rupert slept on the idea. He agrees. Then he sends Elizabeth down the hall to fire her brother. From 1996 to 2001, Elizabeth was managing director of the British satellite TV network B-Sky B, which later changed its name to Sky. She worked hard to position herself as Rupert's successor. Then, in 2000, she abruptly quit. In one version of the story, she let Rupert know by sending him a fax. The exact reason is unknown, but many believe that within the family, Elizabeth had long been hitting the glass ceiling. Years later, James would reportedly say of Rupert, "He is a misogynist." After quitting the family business, Elizabeth was successful on her own terms in a way none of her siblings had been. Her production company, Shine, produced hit TV shows like The Biggest Loser and Master Chef. In early 2011, Rupert bought Shine for $673 million, bringing Elizabeth back into the fold. He also asked her to join the News Corp board. She said yes, but quickly changed her mind, perhaps to distance herself from the massive scandal erupting around News Corp. On July 4, 2011, an article in The Guardian blew the lid off a long-simmering scandal. Reporters from Rupert's beloved tabloid, News of the World, had allegedly been hacking the phones of people they reported on. According to The Guardian, this included Millie Dowler, a teenager who had been abducted and murdered back in 2002. The scandal snowballed. The victims of phone hacking were said to include deceased soldiers, people killed in the London bombing in 2005, and a huge parade of celebrities, even the royal family. This had all happened before James took over as CEO, but he was linked to the scandal nonetheless, and he scrambled to contain the damage. His efforts reportedly included firings, internal changes, and a PR campaign.
Practices of certain individuals did not live up to the standards and quality of journalism that we believe in and that I believe in, and that this company believes in.
But then Rupert came to London, and things got worse. He spoke to reporters. He met with the parents of Millie Dowler, the murdered teenager. None of this was coordinated with James. Rupert seemed to be undermining his son and CEO at every turn. Testifying before a parliamentary committee, he continued to act on his own. Repeatedly, it even looked like he was throwing James under the bus.
As for my comments, Mr. Chairman, and my statement, which I believe was around the closure of the News of the World newspaper.
Before you get to that, I would just like to say one sentence. This is the most humble day of my life.
Thank you.
That is the first I've heard of that.
Elizabeth follows her instructions and walks down to James's office. She tells him that both she and their father think he should step down. Years later, James will describe his feelings in extended interviews with The Atlantic. He's stunned at Rupert's cowardice. He tells Elizabeth to make their father do the dirty work himself. Elizabeth and James's relationship will never be the same. For years, the two siblings will barely speak. Elizabeth will eventually call the episode one of her life's biggest regrets. James denies knowing the phone hacking had been a widespread problem, but his own employees claim under oath that they told him about it. The parliamentary committee concludes that, at minimum, James has shown an astonishing lack of curiosity. The scandal forces Rupert to shut down News of the World, the tabloid that established him in the UK. To contain the fallout, he also splits his empire in two. Print media remains part of a reconstituted News Corps, while television and film become 21st Century Fox. James takes most of the blame for the scandal. Rupert relocates him to New York, where he's made Deputy Chief Operating Officer of News Corp. It's spun as a promotion, but James was running operations in Europe and Asia completely on his own. In New York, he reports to the COO. He's back under his father's watchful eye. 4 years pass. Rupert is now 83 years old, and he's still the head of his companies. It's lunchtime in the corporate dining room at Fox News headquarters. Rupert Murdoch is having lunch with Jared Kushner, Ivanka Trump, and her father. Right as their food hits the table, Donald Trump shares his big news. He's running for president. Rupert's eyes reportedly stay on his soup. He says only that Trump will have to be ready to take some hits in the press. The two men have known each other a long time, going all the way back to New York in the 70s and 80s. Rupert is close friends with Jared Kushner. They've even vacationed together. Rupert is politically conservative, and in 2011, Fox News was the platform for Trump's false birther crusade, in which he repeatedly claimed that President Barack Obama lacked an American birth certificate. But according to an unconfirmed account by author Michael Wolff, who has interviewed Rupert extensively, Rupert supposedly considers Donald Trump, quote, a fucking idiot. When the time comes for the first Republican primary debate, New York Magazine claims he instructs the moderator, Megyn Kelly, to make things hard for Trump.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals.
But when Fox hosts continue to support other candidates and mock Trump, he skips the channel's second debate. Trump's base and Fox's core audience are largely the same people. Without him, the second debate on Fox gets about half as many viewers. Trump may be a fucking idiot in Rupert's mind, but he seems to be crucial to Fox's ratings. The question is, can Rupert afford not to back him? It's a major turning point for Fox News. As the 2016 Republican presidential primaries wind down, Trump was starting to look inevitable. By now, the support of the Murdoch media had become crucial to Republican candidates. But Trump flipped this around. Thanks to social media, he had his own loyal audience. If Fox didn't support him, they might just go somewhere else. Thanks to alternatives like Breitbart and One American News, Fox was no longer the only conservative media outlet in town. So Rupert seemingly pivoted. Pro-Trump articles began popping up in the editorial section of the Wall Street Journal, a Murdoch paper. The covers of the New York Post began celebrating Trump's politically incorrect stances, and Fox News featured hours of pro-Trump programming in its primetime lineup. At Fox, Trump was now the guy. According to at least one Fox anchor, the new rule was, don't bash him. The anchor is quoted saying, "We've thrown in the towel." In November 2016, Trump won the presidency. Right away, Rupert begins visiting the White House. He's frequently on the phone with the new president, sometimes weekly. It's the culmination of Rupert's outsized ambition. He's come a long way from his secret lunch with Margaret Thatcher. He now has a direct line to the White House. Over the phone, Trump reportedly says to him, Rupert, you love this shit." Soon, Fox's lineup changes. It seems more closely aligned with Trump's politics, with pro-Trump personalities like Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity filling primetime slots. Trump often gets up early and watches Fox, then seemingly tweets about what he's seen. Commenters begin to notice a feedback loop developing. Some note that at times, it's hard to tell where policy positions come from, Trump or Fox. There was a time when Fox drove Republican politics. Now it's becoming something totally new. A TV network that, to many, looks inseparable from the White House. Fox is arguably more powerful than ever, and it's still unclear who will follow in Rupert's footsteps. More than a year earlier, this is the Lambs Club in Midtown Manhattan. James Murdoch is flying to Indonesia today, but he's made time for lunch with Lachlan and the COO of News Corp before he heads to the airport. Years from now, he'll discuss the events that follow in his interview with The Atlantic. James is 42. It's been 4 years since the phone hacking scandal, and its effects are still being felt. Still, the succession race may be coming to an end. When the time comes, reports say, James will be the CEO of 21st Century Fox. Lachlan will be given a ceremonial title. But then something unexpected happens. Lachlan breaks the news. He's returning to the US to run 21st Century Fox. Lachlan, who quit years ago and hid in Australia while James toiled in the company and took the blame when things went wrong. Lachlan is going to be his boss. At this point, James has been in the family business for almost 20 years. He's paid his dues. But behind his back, his father has been making plans for his brother to return. In fact, he'd never fully given up on bringing his favorite son back.
I hope, and I've said from the day he went back there, that he's going to come back here.
James does not want to report to his brother. He gets up and heads to the airport. While he's gone, he ignores messages from Rupert and Lachlan. Rumors about him resigning whip through the company. By the time he returns, Rupert has changed his tune. James will still become CEO. Lachlan will be chairman. In reality, he sets his sons up as co-leaders. Both are expected to sign off on every major decision. But according to several accounts, the arrangement is a disaster. The brothers are unable to work together. In the fall of 2018, James spots a way out. A deal is beginning to take shape. Disney will buy nearly all of 21st Century Fox's assets, but not Fox News. James is enthusiastic. The deal could give him cover for exiting the company. Lachlan, on the other hand, is reportedly enraged. He's relocated his family from Australia to be head of a top-tier media property, and his father wants to sell it out from under him. In his interview with The Atlantic, James describes events coming to a head. Over dinner at the Gramercy Tavern in New York, Lachlan blows up. He rants about the deal, makes threats, and finally storms out. On the way out, he tells Rupert that if the deal goes through, you will not have a son. Then he looks at James, and you won't have a brother. But less than a year later, it happens. Disney buys 21st Century Fox. Rupert's children receive an enormous payout from the family trust, about $2 billion each. James steps down as CEO of 21st Century Fox and exits the family business. Lachlan becomes chief executive of Fox, and along with Rupert, co-executive chairman of Fox and News Corp. The father and his favorite son are left running the family business together, just as Rupert always dreamed. The fight for succession seems to finally be over, but the real battle is about to begin. November 3rd, 2020, election night, Trump versus Biden. Americans are glued to their screens. One by one, voting ends in each state. Millions of ballots are counted, and projections begin to take shape for the winner in each of the 50 states. Those projections are influential. They can shape public perception of who's going to win. Just before 11:20 p.m. Eastern Time, Fox News makes a bold call.
He's calling Arizona for Joe Biden. That is a big get.
It's a risky move. Arizona is a hotly contested state in the presidential election, and data is still coming in. But being first to call the state could be a journalistic coup for Fox. It's only prudent for the election desk to get approval before taking such a risky move. Much later, a Murdoch biographer describes the decision this way. The Fox higher-ups sign up on a call one by one. The decision eventually reaches Lachlan, then Rupert. Will he approve announcing such a huge loss for Trump? Fuck him, Rupert reportedly says. Fox made the projection. The Trump team is furious. They barrage Fox with demands the call be reversed. Fox refuses. But it seems Fox's audience is also furious. In the days that follow, ratings plummet. Then Fox pivots.
Tonight, every American should be angry. You should be outraged. You should be worried. You should be concerned at what has happened in the election.
The Dominion software system has been tagged as one allegedly capable of flipping votes.
How, for example, did senile hermit Joe Biden get 15 million more votes than his former boss, rock star crowd surfer Barack Obama?
It gets behind Trump's false narrative about the election being stolen. None of the higher-ups at Fox seem to believe those claims. Rupert reportedly calls them really crazy stuff. Still, internal communications show that many inside the network believe that Fox needs to get back in its audience's good graces to recover in the ratings. It's possible that echoing whatever Trump says will do that. But that will both cost Fox and the Murdoch family dearly. After Fox promotes the Stop the Steal narrative, Dominion Voting Systems, a voting machine company, sues the network for defamation. Fox settles out of court for almost $800 million. The Murdoch empire skews politically conservative, but the Murdoch children seem to vary. As Fox News transforms under Trump, experts say their political differences become more stark. Lachlan has long been known as conservative, but according to his brother James, something changes. He now seems more partisan and reactionary, even willing to consider far-right ideas like white nativism. Commentators have long seen Elizabeth and Prue as more liberal than the rest of the family. They've never said so publicly, but as the family business drifts rightward, private communications obtained by journalists seem to indicate a willingness to push back against positions like climate change denial. James's politics have always been harder to pin down, but just before leaving the family business, he begins to give hints of where he stands. Back in 2017, neo-Nazis marched in Charlottesville, Virginia. They carried torches and chanted, "Blood and soil," and Jews will not replace us. There are violent and even deadly clashes with counter-protesters and police. When asked about the events, Trump seems to partially defend the neo-Nazis.
You had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
In fairness, this was taken out of context at the time. He's talking about other protesters who were supposedly at this rally. In the same speech, Trump explicitly condemns neo-Nazis and white nationalists. In any case, Fox News defended him.
I think the president made a strong and clear message condemning all hate groups.
James was disgusted. As CEO, he wanted to release a statement to his employees, making his position clear. But he couldn't face the pushback he assumed he'd get from Lachlan and their father. But his feelings became clear when an email he wrote to colleagues was leaked to the press. In it, he wrote, "I can't even believe I have to write this. Standing up to Nazis is essential. There are no good Nazis." James saw this as a nonpartisan matter. He didn't necessarily mind catering to conservative viewers. He did want to at least nudge the company towards accountability and higher editorial standards, but he believed Rupert would never allow him to change the company's direction or decouple it from Trump. The battle for succession seemed resolved. It was Lachlan, but all four siblings still had a vote on the family trust. That made their opinions on Fox's political orientations especially relevant. If James, Elizabeth, and Prudence decided to change Fox's direction, All they had to do was wait for Rupert to pass away. At that point, they would outvote Lachlan. That very prospect would ignite the Murdoch family's final battle. It's 2020. This is Australia's Black Summer. Bushfire season has raged out of control, reducing 19 million hectares of land and 3,000 homes to ash. 33 people are dead. Most consider the cause to be at least partially due to climate change, but not the Murdoch properties. They call it arson.
So let me deal with the issue head on. Does climate change cause these fires? No.
So that's the key, the drought. And if the drought can't be blamed on climate change, you can't blame the fires on climate change, especially when so many are deliberately lit.
James is still on the News Corps board, but in January he releases a statement. He and his wife don't just believe in climate change. They're particularly disappointed with the ongoing denial among the news outlets in Australia, given obvious evidence to the contrary. According to James, the rest of the board is so angry that he's pressured to resign. And he does, cutting his last remaining tie to the family business. Except for the trust. Speculation runs rampant. The media begins to report a rift in the family. Some ask if James is willing to contradict the company's climate change denialism. What will he do when Rupert dies? Will he try to drag the family business towards the political center? According to The Atlantic, around this time, James's wife, Catherine, saw a kind of conspiracy theory begin to take hold between Rupert and Lachlan. Rupert had always been known as conservative, but not particularly partisan. His newspapers had supported Thatcher and Reagan, but also the center-left British Prime Minister Tony Blair. In 2008, he and the rest of the family were even have said to have backed Obama. But some believe that in the Trump era, he had grown more partisan. If this was true, and if James, Elizabeth, and Prue were planning to drag the network to the left when he died, that made them a threat. This growing mistrust between the Murdochs sent them on the road to the courtroom in Nevada. The trial that followed would be held in secret, but in 2025, 2 New York Times reporters obtained nearly the entire record of the trial, including a huge number of private messages between the Murdochs that were introduced as evidence. The direct quotes that follow are based on that reporting. According to the Times, after the Disney deal, Lachlan repeatedly tried to buy his siblings out of their shares of the trust and cement his own control. His attempts failed. During the Black Summer, Rupert sent him a message of encouragement. Been thinking a lot overnight about the deal with James et al. Benefit of getting him out probably outweighs other considerations. Around this time, some observers believe Elizabeth, James, and Prudence were becoming a united front. When Rupert died, they would sort things out. With 3 votes on the trust, they could afford to wait. Soon they would realize just how unprepared they were. It's April 9th, 2023. Succession is playing on HBO. The show is based on the Murdochs. The series is now in its 4th season. The main character, family patriarch Logan Roy, is modeled on Rupert. So far, the show has been heavily based on real-life Murdoch lore. But in this episode, the show diverges, sharply. Attention, major spoilers ahead, skip until here if you want to avoid them.
It seems very bad. I'm so sorry to call you like this.
Suddenly and unexpectedly, Logan Roy dies, but it happens off-screen. The viewer experiences Logan's death through the reaction of his children, who find out via a phone call. According to the New York Times, Elizabeth Murdoch is watching, and she feels panic rising inside her. Logan Roy's children are completely unprepared. No one is in charge. Chaos reigns, and eventually they lose control of the company. It all hits way too close to home. Elizabeth's father is now old, very old, 92. In 2018, he tripped and fell while on Lachlan's yacht, suffering life-threatening injuries. In 2022, he was hospitalized with COVID. Someday soon, it will just be Elizabeth, James, Lachlan, and Prudence running the family's trust. The fate of the Murdoch companies will be in their hands. But can they work together? Elizabeth is deeply shaken. So is Mark Devereaux, her representative on the family trust. He sees the episode as a grim warning. I thought this is exactly the thing we should be avoiding, because that is chaotic. So Devereaux writes what he calls the succession memo. In it, he poses questions intended to prepare Elizabeth, James, and Prudence for what's to come. When they have equal say in the direction of the empire, could James accept Fox News as it is? If not, can someone buy him out? On the other hand, if he and Elizabeth and Prudence want to move Fox News to the center, would Lachlan accept it? But Rupert is still very much alive, and he's making plans to stop this very thing. It's early December 2023. Rupert is here to speak to his daughters. A few months ago, he finally retired. He retains only a ceremonial title, Emeritus Chairman of the Fox Board. But he still controls the trust, and he's about to make big changes. He's called a special meeting of the Trust Board. It's in 2 days. Before he pulls the trigger, he wants to see where Elizabeth and Prudence stand. At 4 p.m., he meets with Prudence. Rupert has talking points prepared. These companies are my legacy. I put everything into them over my life. The Murdoch companies are protector of the conservative voice in the English-speaking world. Then he comes out with it. I love each of my children, and my support of Lachlan is not intended to suggest otherwise, but these companies need a designated leader, and Lachlan is that leader. Gradually, Rupert reveals his plan. He, Lachlan, and a team of lawyers and executives have been working on it in secret for months. They call it Project Family Harmony. According to reporting by the New York Times, the Murdoch Family Trust is controlled by a single entity called Cruden Financial Services. Cruden is run by 6 managing directors, Elizabeth, James, Lachlan, and Prudence. Each one have a managing director with a single vote. Rupert has 2 directors with 2 votes. Rupert can never be outvoted, but when he dies, his votes will disappear. His 4 children will control the trust equally. So the plan is to create 2 new trustees, Cruden 2 and Cruden 3. Rupert would control one, Lachlan the other. When Rupert dies, control of both would pass to Lachlan. Lachlan would have more power over the trust than even Rupert ever had. Even working together, James, Elizabeth, and Prudence would be completely disenfranchised. But there is a catch. Legally, Rupert couldn't change the trust unless his changes were in good faith and in the best interest of the beneficiaries they affected. So the argument is this: James, Elizabeth, and Prudence are planning to change the political orientation of Fox News. If they did that, ratings would drop, shares would become less profitable, and the trust would suffer. With Lachlan in total control, Fox would remain profitable, benefiting everyone. When her father is finished, Prudence is lost for words. All she can manage is, right. Later he explains the plan to Elizabeth. Her response is more straightforward. You are completely disenfranchising me and my siblings. You've blown a hole in the family. Rupert leaves London without either daughter's support. Later, Elizabeth texted Lachlan that Project Family Harmony was a massive gut punch. Lachlan wrote back, "Hey Liz, I really appreciate your support. Today is about Dad's wishes and confirming all of our support for him and for his wishes. It shouldn't be difficult or controversial. Love you, Lachlan." The special meeting happened over Zoom. Rupert read out the changes from a prepared script. The next day, he formally filed the changes to the trust. Later on, details would emerge that suggested the changes had a single target: James. In Project Family Harmony documents, he was called a troublesome beneficiary or just troublesome. The real goal was to stop him at all costs. Later, Rupert sent James a copy of his script from the Zoom call. A note said, "James, still time to talk. Love, Dad. P.S. Love to see my grandchildren one day." Ironically, with these changes, Rupert had started the very rebellion he was trying to avoid. It's September 16th, 2024. Washoe County Courthouse. Immediately after Rupert filed the changes to the trust, Elizabeth, James, and Prudence formally objected. They're inside these SUVs. Half an hour later, the second wave with Rupert and Lachlan arrives. Today is their first day in court. The descriptions that follow are based on records of the trial obtained by the New York Times. Rupert is the first in the family to take the stand. He's 93. His voice is sometimes faint, but he still seems perfectly lucid. He's asked about his motivation in changing the trust. He says if there's uncertainty about the management, the public will feel it. Inside, the company would feel it. Ensuring Lachlan's succession will eliminate this uncertainty. Once and for all, everyone will know where they stand. I just felt sure, very certain, that if these things weren't settled, there would be trouble, and the trouble would be damaging. The opposition lawyers question him. Isn't Project Family Harmony really about preserving Rupert's legacy by keeping Fox News on the political right? Rupert tells him there's no difference between the two. If Fox changes its political orientation, its audience will rebel again. Lachlan will keep things as they are, ensuring that the network and that the family's trust shares remain valuable. That benefits the whole family. His whole case rests on this argument. The changes are only intended to benefit shareholders. But then he keeps going. Fox News cannot fall into the wrong hands. It will be a disaster if it does. And the one at fault is James. Because of him, Elizabeth and Prudence will have to choose between their brothers if one day they all share control over the trust. After his testimony, Rupert is excused from court due to illness. But James suspects another reason: cowardice. On day 3, Elizabeth takes the stand. Rupert's lawyer paints her, Prudence, and James as spoiled billionaire children determined to thwart the man who had made them wealthy beyond most people's wildest dreams. Hasn't Elizabeth been fortunate to have become a multi-billionaire thanks to her father's enormous generosity? Elizabeth replies, "I wouldn't call it generosity, but his enormous success, yes." She is grateful to her father, though. All her life, he had mentored her in media and business. "I feel like I was taught at the feet of the master." The lawyer hones in on a meeting that took place a year before. James, Elizabeth, Prudence, and their spouses had all met for dinner at Claridge's, a London hotel and restaurant. Beforehand, the siblings had met in a private conference room for 90 minutes. They caught up, talked about the succession memo and plans for Rupert's death, and complained about Lachlan and their family. Or so they said. Before the trial, a piece of evidence had come to light. In his diary, Prudence's representative to the trust had written about the brothers' activities and the meeting at Claridge's. In it, he writes that the three are planning to get rid of Lachlan. Rupert's lawyers paint a picture of a full-blown conspiracy. Elizabeth's lawyer develops a competing image. Rupert and Lachlan are the ones who've been scheming. It's Project Family Harmony that has torn the family in two, not some supposed conspiracy by Elizabeth, James, and Prudence. He asks Elizabeth to describe how Rupert explained his plans to her. She describes feeling angry and betrayed. "What is your relationship with your father like today?" the lawyer asks. "Absent. What was it like before the December 6th special meeting?" "Unbelievably close." In the afternoon on day 3, James testifies. Rupert's lawyers seek to portray him as a resentful son plotting his revenge, a puppet master scheming to undermine his brother. James admits they talked about outvoting Lachlan when their father died, but he insists they never discussed a coup. The lawyer asks about the dinner where Lachlan had essentially disowned him because of the Disney deal, and James is surprised to find himself crying. Later on, he chokes up when discussing his relationship with his father. "You know, there have been a lot of hurtful things over the years," he tells the court. "We worked together very closely for a long time. It's hard." But he's direct when asked about identifying as the troublesome beneficiary. He calls the label garbage. "They're making stuff up, or believing things that are being told to create some sort of boogeyman that is a justification for stealing stuff they didn't want to buy." Day 4, Lachlan is called to the stand. A question hangs over the trial. Is he the target of a plot by his siblings, or is he targeting them? He insists that evidence of a plot against him has been piling up for years. He says thousands of stories in the media have quoted anonymous sources close to James, confirming his plans to oust Lachlan. One unauthorized biography of Lachlan quotes an anonymous source. Lachlan gets fired the day Rupert dies. As Lachlan sees it, quotes like this clearly come from people close to James. Taken together, they show why Lachlan and Rupert had to act. But under cross-examination, cracks begin to appear. Lachlan can't prove that the anonymous sources come from James. In fact, he's changed his mind. Now he thinks they're people close to Elizabeth. But it's revealed that the source of the biography quote is much closer to home. It's a friend and advisor of Lachlan's who spoke to the author for more than 14 hours, and Lachlan had approved it. At least some of his evidence of a plot had come from within his own camp. Lachlan is forced to walk back other things too, and he admits that changing the trust wasn't Rupert's idea, it was his. On December 7th, the probate court commissioner filed his report. It was unambiguous, even harsh. Rupert and Lachlan had acted in bad faith. Item by item, he dismissed the supposed evidence of a sibling plot. The Claridge's meeting had amounted to no more than a casual and inchoate conversation. Lachlan's testimony had been misleading. Statements he had made about a failed corporate merger were an example of Lachlan Murdoch's lack of candor with the parties and on the witness stand. Ultimately, the changes to the trust were a carefully crafted charade. Their motivation was political, to ensure that Rupert's companies continue to be alternative conservative voices in media after he dies. Rupert and Lachlan immediately appealed. According to the New York Times, their chances of success were slim. James, Elizabeth, and Prudence's intentions remained unknown. Time seemed to be on their side, though. When Rupert died, they would have the power to reorient the Murdoch companies. Behind the scenes, things may not have been so cut and dried. according to the reporting by the New York Times, in February 2025, the balance of power seemed to shift. Rupert and Lachlan's appeal nudged forward, with a state judge requesting oral arguments. And The Atlantic published a profile of James. In it, he criticized his father and brother and shared sensitive details of the sealed court case. Rupert and Lachlan's lawyers pounced, requesting sanctions against James and a whole new trial. Outside of the trial, Rupert seemed more powerful than ever in some ways. Trump is once again president. Former Fox employees peppered the administration, including Trump's cabinet. Rupert has resumed his visits to the White House, though his relationship with Trump isn't without turbulence. In July 2025, Trump even sued Rupert and his paper, The Wall Street Journal, for its claims about a bawdy note he allegedly wrote to Jeffrey Epstein. As the appeal seemed to progress, the Murdochs headed back to the negotiating table. In September 2025, a deal was announced. Elizabeth, James, and Prudence would sell their shares of their empire for $1.1 billion each. The current Murdoch family trust would be dissolved and a new one created, including Lachlan and Rupert's two daughters, with Wendy Deng, Grace, and Chloe. In a way, both sides could claim victory. Elizabeth, James, and Prudence were finally severing their ties with an empire they increasingly seemed to disagree with politically, and doing so with an impressive payout. Lachlan would succeed his father as head of the family business, and Rupert, after decades of intrigue and infighting, has finally secured his legacy. In Lachlan's hands, Fox News and News Corp seem likely to stay reliably conservative. They will remain what Rupert has always envisioned, a family business. But the family itself may never be the same.